A street corner in Covington, Kentucky at exactly 3:33 in the afternoon, the photographer put the time in his caption. In the window behind the man, a printed card. Gee, it's great to be an American. September 1939. For 8 years, 1935 to 1943, photographers on the federal payroll kept a camera on Cincinnati and the Kentucky towns across the river. Their negatives have sat in Washington ever since in black and white. So, let's be straight about what you're watching. Every color in this film is a guess, made this year by a machine from the gray values on those negatives. The faces, the light, the framing, those belong to the photographers untouched. The colors are estimates. Every original is free at the Library of Congress, linked below. And one frame near the end of this film is real color, made in the camera. We'll tell you when. December 1935. Carl Medans carried a government camera through the tenement districts of Cincinnati, Van Horn Street in the Haze. His captions do not editorialize much. This one says, "Tenement Kitchen Shambles. Tenement Backyard and Privy." In an old schoolhouse cut up into dwellings, the common hallway sink. On the wall, somebody's hand-lettered notice. Please keep this zinc clean. Out back of the same schoolhouse, the toilet stood in a tier. Along the Ohio, a man lived in a tent under a stovepipe. The caption calls it a common scene along the river. The file sorts the poor of 1935 by race in the language of 1935. This frame is captioned, "Negro Dwelling, Interior, a bedroom that is also the kitchen." A family at their kitchen table. A bed and sitting room, one stove for both. Houses stacked on the hillside over the railroad cut. None of this was photographed by accident. The pictures were evidence being gathered for a purpose. February 1936. Midens turned the same camera on 4 men at drafting tables in Washington. This is Justin Hartzog, chief town planner of what the government called the Cincinnati Project. William A. Strong, assistant chief town planner. Roland A. Wang, chief of the architectural staff. And Frank Cordner, his assistant. The Slums survey was their justification file. The answer to it was to be a whole new town built from nothing, owned by the government. April 1936. On farmland north of the city, teams and machines began grading a town that did not exist yet. They called it Greenhills. The program's own booklet said each Greenbelt town would eventually house 3,000 to 5,000 families, though only 750 to 1,300 dwellings would be built at first. Surveyors on the bare ground. A hay rake at a barn near the project, the farm country the new town was replacing. By February 1937, houses. The first families moved in on April 1st, 1938. 676 homes. The plan had said 1,000. The money said less. Rent ran $18 a month for one bedroom, $42 for a house. Getting in took as many as 14 forms, a credit check, and a visit from a social worker. Families where both parents worked were excluded. This is the bus that ran between Greenhills and Cincinnati. October 1938, a new photographer, John Vachon, 24 years old, reached Fountain Square as the city turned 150. He found fire prevention week first, a mock cemetery downtown, a headstone for every way a house burns down. Then the sesquicentennial parade. He mostly photographed the crowd, not the floats. A waiter and a chef out on the sidewalk in their whites. His caption, "Watching Cincinnati's sesquicentennial parade." A Roman chariot at the tail end of the parade waiting on a bus. Boys piled up on the post office to watch it all go by. And when it was over, a man alone with his newspaper on Fountain Square among the pigeons. September 1939. Milk in downtown Cincinnati still came behind a horse. A doorway downtown lettered U.S. Government Temporary Quarters. Across the river in Covington, a billboard kept score of the county's traffic dead. Accidents, injured, killed, this year against last. Space donated, the sign says, by a brewing company. Help make Covington safe. The street corner from the start of this film. 3:33 in the afternoon, and the war in Europe 3 weeks old. That same month, the Reds clinched the pennant. Cincinnati's first World Series since 1919. In Covington, Vachon photographed this man and captioned him in 3 words. World Series ticket dealer. The suspension bridge over to Cincinnati. The file goes quiet here for 2 years. When it picks up again, everything in it has been drafted. February 1942. Dayton, Kentucky, on the riverbank east of Covington. The Wadsworth Watch Case Factory, cases, compacts, luxury goods, and brass, photographed for a government series titled Conversion, Watch Cases to War Production. In a workman's palm, the new product. The caption calls them little giants, tiny fuse baffles vital to victory made for the Picatinny arsenal. The last of the compacts. When the operator finishes decorating this batch, the caption says, she'll head for the war production end of the plant. Of this machinist, the government's caption writer says his hair is white, but his eye is keen. 50 years of precision work. Of this operator, 20 years at the plant. Another skilled worker enlists for the duration. Above one bench hangs a 45-star flag. Its owner, the caption says, was a soldier of the firing line of 98, now a soldier of the production line of 42. Across the river at Aluminum Industries Incorporated of Cincinnati the same month. Molten aluminum going into sand molds. The caption, bright white hot aluminum, vital to Uncle Sam's war effort. Ingots rejected for slight imperfection. Shoveled back into the furnace to try again. Castings headed for the sandblast table. And a frame the file titles. Women's place in this large Midwest aluminum factory. June 1943. Arthur Siegel rode a towboat called the Ernest T. Weir down the Ohio to Cincinnati and photographed the whole run. The tow ahead of her, barges of steel girders. The deck hands. Cooks. The pilot. Near the city, the excursion boat Island Queen crossed her bow, a side-wheeler still working the river. A train on the Cincinnati Bridge, shot from the water. The same June, in a Kroger plant in the city, pork was going into cans stenciled in Russian. Svinaya Tushonka. Lend-lease rations bound for the Soviet Union. The captions read like a procedure manual. Cooked 8 minutes at 180 degrees. Treated for 20% pre-shrinkage. Mrs. M. Berry trimming down pork to size. The file kept her name. The canning line? At Procter & Gamble, the soap company explained its war chemistry to the camera. Soap has to be made before glycerine can be obtained from the waste fat. And the next caption says where the glycerin goes. It reads, "Filling a drum with dynamite glycerin. September 1943. Esther Bubley, 22 years old, hired the year before as a darkroom assistant, was sent out to ride the buses with a camera. Cincinnati to Louisville. On the road between Columbus and Cincinnati, she shot what the war had done to the roadside. A sign in front of a former gas station, closed, nothing for sale. Another gas station had become a house. Only one of many, her caption says, which are so converted. The Cincinnati Greyhound terminal. The dispatcher. Calling the buses. Boarding. The 2 a.m. bus to Chicago. A soldier sleeping somewhere between Cincinnati and Louisville. She followed one driver home. Bernard Cochran. 14 years behind the wheel, her caption says, and never an accident. His daughters on the way back from Sunday school, Mary Frida, Irma Jean, and Sue Ann. Sunday dinner at the Cochrans. And Mrs. Cochran heading out to sell war bonds door to door. The service flag in the window is for her brother. On the bus out of town, a girl who cooked in a roadside restaurant told Bubley her plan. She was leaving the job to become a nurse. One more picture. And this one is not ours. Around 1942, John Vachon loaded a roll of Kodachrome near Cincinnati, and a boy looked into his camera. This frame is real color, made in the camera, 80 years ago. Set it against everything else you've just seen. That's the honest gap between the record and our guesses. And the originals, all of them, are free at the Library of Congress.